GoPro, sick sons of bitches. Why do you have to come up with something so perfect? 3 years ago, you invented the Hero Session 5. This little camera was perfect. Perfect for an action camera. I'm really quite amazing when it first came out. It was packed with the same technology that your Hero 5 Black had. You could do 4K 30, 2.7K 30, Super View. And you got rid of all the stuff that you don't need in an action camera. No screens, no ability to play back on the device. No need for any kind of complicated UI. Just one button to start it and go, and that was it. And that's a beautiful thing. But then 2 years later, you decided to take it away from us. And I kind of have to question why that was. Because why is it that an action camera, which by its definition is designed for action, should have more things that can break on it? Like the Hero 7 Black is a great camera, but it has 2 screens on it now. Not even one screen, 2 screens. And they're both inherently breakable. And not only that, the whole UI experience is a real shit show on the Hero 7 because it tries to do too much. It tries to be able to be a movie playback thing. And, you know, all of the extra features like time-lapse photography and stuff like that, they're just not needed. They don't need to be there, really. This thing has a screen, I suppose, if you can call this little tiny LCD thing on the top a screen. But it's just enough to let you know that you're on the right settings and that it's recording. That's great. That's all you need. For us flying mini quads, this has basically been considered the holy grail, the gold standard of cameras. And after these got discontinued, they started rocketing in price, going up to more than they cost when they first came out 3 years ago. So these have kind of been a little bit of a gold dust item now. They're kind of a little bit sought after. But thankfully, other companies have realized that GoPro has made a stupid mistake and are now going to try and fill in their shoes. The first of which is Foxeer with the Box 2, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. On paper, or indeed on the back of the box, the specs look good. The sensor is actually better than the Hero Session 5. It's better than the Hero 7 Black, if you just consider sensor revisions better. I mean, it doesn't really mean much because it's still a 1/2/3 sensor. It's still the same size. It still has the same light collecting ability, which is really all a sensor is designed to do. So although it has a higher number, it's a higher revision. Whether or not that provides a better image is really up for debate. It has a dual-core CPU. Cool, I guess. The FOV is listed as 166 degrees. Now, companies use a lot of fudging of numbers in a lot of areas, especially Chinese companies. And whether or not it'll actually be a true 166 doesn't really matter. GoPro is 170 degrees, so it's already admitting that it has 4 degrees less than the GoPro. So that's fine. We'll see. Anyway, the resolutions are the same, more or less, all the ones that we care about anyway, which is basically 2.7, 30 or 60. And yeah, apart from that, there's no kind of image stabilization like hypersmooth. I mean, the Hero 5 doesn't have any great stabilization either. It only has EIS, just like a really basic electronic stabilization, which, you know, is better off just turning it off really, because if it doesn't mess up the image or do something weird, then you're just losing field of view. So on paper, this thing looks good. I guess let's open it up and see what's inside. So what do you get in your Box 2 box? It's the Box 2 box. So it's the Box 2 that comes in one of these cages. These are pretty synonymous to GoPro as well. This kind of looks like a direct copy of the way that they mount them, to be honest. Yeah, usually these just go straight in the bin, so that is not needed. Cool, looks kind of just like a GoPro, really. Nice. What else do we get in the box? Okay, what have we got here? Manuals. One in Chinese, one in English. Great. Some more little mounts. Those won't be needed either. USB-C cable. Shoehorn, I think. I have no idea what that is. This is interesting. This is a tool for removing these screws for the glass, and that's interesting because they also sell these. These are ND filters, and they're kind of designed to be direct glass replacements for the box. Now, That sounds cool in theory because it means you're probably going to get a really good quality ND filter. There we go, you can see it doing its ND-ness. Very clever, ND-ness. So this is probably going to be a very nice quality filter because it's not like a stick-on, and it's nice to not have an extra layer of glass. Like the TPS jello guards are glass, and that means you're putting a piece of glass against the glass of the GoPro lens, which, you know, dust and shit can get in between that. So this is good, but it does mean that you have to remove 8 screws to change an ND filter, which doesn't sound fun in the field. So I would probably just get an ND8, stick that on, and just leave that on all the time. That's my advice. So what we're going to do now is look at some test footage of both cameras recording the same flight. This is the Box 2 and the Session 5. We have an ND8 filter on both of them in this footage. They are recorded at 2.7K, 30 FPS, and Super View, or in the case of the Box 2, whatever their legally distinct name for Super View is, because I believe it's a registered trademark. So Hyperview or Supervision, I think it's called Supervision actually, I think that is what they're calling it. So we're going to have a look at some footage now. I'll play 30 seconds of each camera. I'm not going to tell you which one each one is until the end, so then you can sort of make your own mind up about which one looks better. Did you guess? Did you get it right? Did you prefer the Box 2? Did you prefer the Hero Session 5? If you preferred the Box 2, then congratulations, you're sorted because these are still available. If you preferred the Session 5, then maybe you thought the Box 2 was close enough. So what I will do now is just go over a few of the things that I noticed. Right, first up, let's have a look at this frame here, which is when it's on the ground. You can see the difference. So this is the GoPro. The bottom camera was the GoPro. So if you see the props in view, then you know it's on the GoPro. So this demonstrates really clearly the field of view difference. So they actually have quite a similar field of view. If you look at the very edge, you can see just the corner of the building on the GoPro. On the Foxeer, it is kind of the same. You can just about see, and maybe it's like a degree less. So they probably weren't lying when they said it is a 166 degree field of view. Kudos to Foxeer. I think that is pretty accurate. But there is something worth noticing, which is the way that the Super View warping is handled, and also there seems to be hardly any fisheye correction on the Foxeer. So looking at the GoPro, you can see that the line across the middle, where this, where the sort of wall of this abandoned building sort of starts here, it's not straight on the GoPro. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing straight about it. It is a curved line because it's a wide angle lens that happens. But they do a really good job of sort of making it seem like it's in proportion to do with the way that they stretch the image. With the Box 2, not so much. You can see a much bigger sort of bulge out the bottom of this towards the middle of the camera. Now this, to me, is a negative. I prefer the image to look, even though everything looks a bit smaller on the GoPro, because it gives you the impression that it's further away, I think it does look more natural. Right, if we grab a frame in motion, we can see that the GoPro has a really nice creamy motion blur here. Now this is because I believe that the ND filter is doing a good job. It wasn't a very bright day. It was a bit overcast and it was raining, so it was a bit of a challenge. The Box 2, Yeah, pretty good. You can see that it's probably blurring slightly differently, but yeah, it still looks really good. There is still that over sharpening that Foxeer, for fuck's sake. Right, you're called Foxeer from now on, Foxeer. There still is this sort of classic over sharpening that that Foxeer are known for in all of their FPV cams as well. I generally turn the sharpness right down because they always have it cranked up to max. This is all on default settings for both cameras. So to make sure this was a fair test, we ran it on basically as it comes out the box, apart from the resolution change. So it is on default color, default white balance, all of those things are default. And the default sharpening, what a surprise with Foxeer, is sharper than GoPro. I mean, it doesn't look terrible. It looks a lot better than their sort of like their ridiculously over sharpened FPV cameras. So they've learned their lesson a little bit. And I think if we just watch a little bit more of this clip, in motion, I think that the Box 2 performs really well. I'm actually really impressed with everything I'm seeing. Some of the times the shots are like a dead ringer 1-to-1, basically in terms of the color and the sharpness and the image quality. Other times you can sort of see the over sharpening happening, but they're not oversaturating. That's really good. I'm impressed with that. Yeah, generally, I think this is a really good camera. You can see there is a slight difference in the white balance. I think the GoPro looks nicer personally. It has a much more sort of natural white balance out of the box. This is stuff that can be tweaked in post though. You can definitely do a color pass, a color grade on the Foxeer, and it would look as good as the GoPro. You can see that it is over sharpened here still, like these leaves do look a little bit crazy. But yeah, it's really good, guys. I think everything is looking real good. The fisheye is a little bit distracting, I'm not gonna lie, but this is better than a Hero 4. This is better than a Hero 4 session, or a Hero session. I think I can say that safely. The image quality is better. And it's better than any of the other attempts at action cams that haven't been GoPro up to now. I'm impressed. I'm really genuinely impressed. Right, so some important information if you're considering this as a purchase. So the Box 2 currently retails for $129. You can get it from Foxeer themselves, that's where I got mine from. Something else to consider, which is the software on this, how you talk to it, which is done with a mobile app. Same as GoPro. GoPro has a mobile app that they use to talk to their cameras, and it works fine. You can add a bunch of cameras on there, so if you've got more than one GoPro, you can set all your settings up through there, see the live preview and that stuff. And Foxeer has tried to do the same. Now, they had a camera out before, which was the Box. Well, obviously, it's called the Box 2, so there was one out before. But for some reason, you can't use the same app. You have to use a different app. And the new app is called Foxeer HD. See, there are some issues with this app. For example, some of the bits aren't localized correctly. So this setting for field of view has 3 symbols that I don't know what they mean. Cycle record time. I didn't know what this means, but this actually does change the length of each clip. So this will separate your recording into 2-minute clips if you have it on 2 minutes. This is not really a big problem if you're using an editor like Premiere or whatever to stitch them together. It doesn't really make much difference. All of the other settings seem pretty standard. The video resolution is interesting because this is where you set up the super view. And it only seems to be available for 2.7K. And it's just called super view, so fuck trademarks. The other thing is there doesn't seem to be any other option for frame rates apart from in here, so it's like everything's kind of tied together. It's not as nice as an experience as the GoPro. Professional settings, you have sharpness, turn that down to low if I were you. Everything else, saturation was good for a Foxeer camera that's usually oversaturated, over sharpness. Saturation by default seemed fine. Camera settings, image rotate. I guess if you want to rotate your image, I think that means rotate. So it will flip if you mount the camera upside down. Light frequency will be like an anti-flicker. EIS, image stabilization, electronic image stabilization, usually rubbish. On these kind of cameras, it's not great on the Session 5 either. So don't think that is a diss really at this camera. And yeah, and everything else I would say is pretty standard. It has a fine camera as well. With the world's quietest beep, how are you going to find that? You're not going to find that anywhere unless it's next to you. anyway, good try, I guess. So that's the software experience. I think overall it is a bit lacking, but once you've got the settings that you want, it kind of doesn't matter, right? Because it has the quick turn on and start thing. You can just press the power and then press go, and then you're in business. All right, so that covers the software. So there are just a couple of negatives that I need to talk about now. So this is probably quite important. The first time I tried to review this, I went out and I did the same thing. I went to a field and tried to take some test footage. When I got home, nothing had recorded on the camera. And the problem was I put a 128 gigabyte card in, which apparently isn't supported. But that's not written anywhere on any of the media. I can only assume that's what it was, because when I tried another card, it recorded fine. But if you are not using the app to press record, you have no idea that it is not recording. It still flashes the light like you think it's recording, and there is no way to know, because there is no screen on this showing you any kind of timer like there is in the Session 5, so I didn't know nothing was being recorded. So that was a waste of a day. The other thing is, this might influence people's decisions actually on whether they would use it on a mini quad, because this is a Session 5 mount for a mini quad, and the Session 5 fits in it. Quite snug, but it fits. The Foxeer Box 2 does not fit. You think it's the same form factor, but it's actually not. There is no way this will go in here, because the camera is actually longer than the Session 5 by probably, I don't know, 5mm, maybe slightly more. But it means that these mounts will not fit. The fact that it doesn't fit in these mounts means that if you were considering replacing a broken Session 5 with one of these, it might actually sway your opinion not to, because, well, it ain't going to fit and you're going to have to print some new mounts, or you're going to have to even maybe design some, because there's a good chance that there isn't a vast majority of these out there yet, because this camera is very new. Once the camera takes off, which I think it inevitably will, because it is generally pretty good in terms of image quality, then these mounts will probably be a lot more widely available. But yeah, those two things to consider. You can't use 128 gigabyte cards, and it's not going to fit in your old Session 5 mounts, are probably the biggest caveats to this camera. Other than that, stick it on a Bando Slayer and just go ham, because this thing does produce really good quality video, and it's not as expensive as like a Hero 7. It's great. Right, I hope you found this review helpful and has maybe helped you make a decision of whether you would like to get a Box 2. I will leave you with some flight footage now showing a side-by-side comparison. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.